Alright, it's time for another drawing in the dark. This one, I'm keeping up with the villains that I've been drawing, these comic book villains and stuff. And this one turns out to be kind of timely with the new Venom trailer coming out. So we're drawing Venom today from Marvel Comics, one of my favorite villains of all time, by far. And yeah, this one turns out pretty good, I think. I really burned through a lot of ballpoint penning though on this one. That is also for sure. Just going through, the basics, laying things out, putting down some scribbles, trying to figure out what kind of body position I wanted to build around the head. I really had an angle that I wanted of the head versus a pose. So I building this up around this cool headshot, and then I just kind of scribble it all out, play around with some stuff, trying to keep the the marks on the paper as light and as generalized as I can for as long as I can. And then we just start scribbling it in, rendering out details, refining things, getting a little bit darker here and there, and go. I really had to speed this one up a good amount, especially towards the end here. I slowly start speeding things up a bit more and more as I go through this one. Mostly because, already you can kind of see with the drawing that, the gist is done. I've got everything mostly figured out. Really, it just comes down to now refining and detailing things. And that's really what takes the most amount of time, the most amount of labor. So I've been trying to come up with something I could talk about in a topical kind of way, or in a current events kind of way. And I've been scrolling through social media and stuff, trying to see what really, what the zeitgeist is these days. Zero in on something to identify with, There's a real big Gen X kind of movement going on with a lot of the Gen Xers kind of coming out of the woodwork, talking about a lot of Gen X stuff, drinking water from the hose, staying outside until, the sun went down. And while all that is true, I never really felt like I fit in, even in those days. I'm a Gen Xer. Other than like nerd culture, which I was really deep into, fantasy, science fiction, D&D, comic books, Magic the Gathering, all kinds of role-playing games, tons of different kinds of role-playing games. Riffs, Ninja Turtles, the Marvel superheroes, Guardians, Champions, Heroes, White Wolf, Vampire, Wraith, Werewolf, Changeling, Mage, H.P. Lovecraft, Conan the Barbarian, Archie Comics, House of Mystery, Vampirilla, Elvira, just tons and tons and tons of pop culture, in the 80s and 90s. It really was, I think, the true emergence of overhyped cultural consumption. All the cartoons had toys, everything was pushing a product. You had more and more innovation, I guess, in marketing, more gaslighting in marketing, tons of manipulation, looking at, smoking ads to alcohol commercials and stuff. It really was quite an interesting time developmentally as far as mass marketing, mass media communications, and getting into, I went to school initially for 3D animation, which then turned into just like a visual communications kind of thing before I dropped out. A lot of what we spent time on was multimedia development for stuff like CD-ROMs and stuff, animation, putting everything together, editing. I learned how to edit with, Premiere didn't even really exist. What was it called? The Avid system. And you had to check out time for the editing computer. You had to check out time for camera equipment, for various rendering systems and stuff. Especially, in a school that was very geared towards like the SIGGRAPH kind of animation competitions and whatnot. the push for multimedia. I mean, people, may or may not grasp these days the reality of how much media technology is now in the hands of common people. The level of technological equipment and capability that we carry around with our smartphones would be, $500,000 at least in equipment and capability in the 80s and 90s. Easy, back when you had like public access channels and stuff, local public access where somebody could petition and present, a show that may not have been mainstream or particularly marketable in a number of ways. I'm thinking about, like you look at the movie Wayne's World, and that's really kind of based off of literally that, like a Canadian public access channel. Similar stuff would be like the Red Green Show. What was that guy's name? Tom Green, I think. He also did public access and stuff. And so, but that still took a lot of equipment, training, expertise, access that was not easy to get. And now, we're just shoving these things into the hands of kids. Everybody is getting in on making media for online now. It's just becoming part of how we express ourselves and how we show up in our culture nowadays. I mean, it's incredible. It's absolutely fascinating. And how it's evolved, how it's devolved in a number of ways, how these tools of mass communication are actually being used now. I mean, it's nuts, And of course, I mean, it's a double-edged sword. Everybody and anybody having access to this technology means that you get way more disinformation, means you get way more nuts and bolts, boots on the ground kind of tutorial work for fixing cars or washing machines or phones or maintaining, parts of your house and stuff. The repair instructional videos are nuts. That there are millions of views on people mowing lawns, that there are millions of views on people restoring, lanterns from the 1800s. I mean, it's incredible. The vast variety. I mean, you really do get everything. It's a modern Tower of Babel, where everything comes together, regardless of language. The language barriers are being broken down. The idea barriers are being broken down. A lot of our philosophies now are crashing into each other in ways where they didn't always necessarily have to deal with that. You could have your kind of secret garden kind of thing where you go back and have your philosophy with the other people that agree with it and discuss it and refine it and argue within itself. But now, I mean, it's all so out there, and everything is challengeable and everything is challenged. That's an interesting thing to me with, say, like social media, where when you post something and then somebody posts a disagreement or you're disagreeing with somebody else's post, that somehow people are upset when they get their ideas challenged on public forums, or at least these social media forums and stuff, because I wouldn't even necessarily say that they're public. Facebook's a private entity, it's a private company. They don't have to let you in. They don't have to let you do anything on social media, on their Facebook platform. They're not the government. So free speech protections, say on Facebook, don't really exist in the same way as they do in the American Constitution goes. But at the same time, Facebook has done more for people's freedom of speech than anything since the First Amendment, really, because how else were you going to be able to get your voice and your ideas heard by thousands, tens of thousands, millions of people without platforms like Facebook, without these social media platforms? And so before, you could say whatever you wanted in the park, in your house, amongst friends or something, but who cares? That doesn't really matter so much as far as really your ideas being heard and challenged and adopted. Now, we have that. And it's funny to me that we also have more people complaining that their freedom of speech is being, damaged or held back or denied to them in some way. Now, we face so much pushback. I mean, it's way more common for people on social media to disagree necessarily than to agree. And there's an interesting phenomenon with that as far as like how human beings respond to what we perceive as a threat or something positive or negative. You don't have to respond to something that's not a threat to you, because it killed it. Oh, for God's sake. Let's talk about the drawing. I'm running into a number of difficulties here with getting on, apparently, with my free speech, internet, social media diatribe here. And, or I guess it's more of a monologue. I don't know. It's probably more of a monologue, right? I mean, I'm not talking to anybody. There's no conversation happening here. But, yeah, social media is weird. How people respond to social media, how we pay more attention to what we perceive to be as dangerous or bad than the attention we give to stuff that's safe or good. We have to respond to what we think of as like the tiger in the room. You can't ignore that. It has to be addressed. It has to somehow be disarmed, And so that it is, to a large effect, a lot of what people are doing on social media is responding to the things that they perceive as threats. And in order to somehow diffuse them or disarm them in a way, or solve them or destroy them in ways that then they can feel more safe and secure about their situation as they understand it. Because really, all human beings are motivated by self-interest. Every last one of us is motivated by pure self-interest. Now, your self-interest can move towards what appears to be something selfless, which appears to be something where you're working towards a particular community, organization, cause, development, innovation, whatever the motive is, whatever the end goal is. That's still, your own self-interest is putting you there. Understanding that, and I think that a lot of these tech companies do kind of understand that, as far as allowing to a point human behavior to guide them versus them trying to manipulate human behavior. It fits in with like old adages about newspapers and stuff, about how good news doesn't sell newspapers, because if the weather's nice, if the news is good, well, then you don't need to buy the newspaper. Why would you spend your resources then to acquire something when everything in it is going to be essentially useless to you? But if bad things are happening, if there's a serial killer on the street, if there's a big storm coming or something, well, then you get the paper, because you need to know more. You need to prepare yourself. You need to be equipped intellectually for what's happening and what's going on. What are the dangers around you? Because our pattern recognizing brains are also geared towards not just patterns, but dangerous patterns, threats, and the threats that we perceive to ourselves, our family, our legacy, our culture, our people, our species and stuff. A lot of that will come to a large degree from self-interest. And when that self-interest isn't there, then you see a lot of disengagement. Because if it doesn't align with an individual's self-interest, and you can even see this when people say, oh, I don't listen to politics, or I don't watch a lot of movies, or I don't like this, or I don't like that. And to a large degree, if that's true, then they won't even talk about it much. Because, with like that whole like concept of like, how do you know you're talking to a vegan? They'll tell you. There's a lot of identity groups now that, that's how you know that you're talking to somebody of a particular identity group, is that they'll tell you. Now, granted, there are identity groups that don't have to tell you that you're interacting with them because it's obvious. Say like, physical characteristics and stuff that are used to build identity groups around. But for the most part, we are moving through a paradigm, an internal individual paradigm of self-interest. What do I need? What is better for me? What is better for the people around me? How is this going to benefit my life, my community, my school, my store, my interactions? And with that, we all become heavily biased and heavily myopic in how we perceive things, how we choose to see things, our philosophies are shaped and individualized in a way. And that's also another angle too, is that it's becoming more obvious because of social media and stuff how individualized people's philosophies are, how nuanced our philosophies are, and how they don't always align. Even though you might think that you're on the same side as somebody, there's going to be plenty that you'll find between the two of you that you're not on the same side with. The people in this world that I agree with the most, I disagree with to a huge degree, probably more than I'm aware of than other people, because we've found our disagreements more deeply based off of what we do actually agree on. And so I guess part of my point with this, with mass communication and social media and our modern kind of state of things, especially coming from an experience that was so vastly different when I was young to where it is now, now that I am older, that we really do have to be a lot more deliberate and a lot more conscientious on our own part, being more self-responsible with how we choose to consume and how we choose to interact and what we choose to express and where and with who. There was a lot of social rules that we learned about, from like the 60s and 70s, as far as like, you don't talk about politics and religion with family. And now, we have to learn new social, cultural rules as far as how social media works and how we interact and who we interact with, the behavior that we engage in when we do so, that we're just going to have to learn. The mob is now able to hear itself, and in a lot of ways it's very angry about it. It seems like like no one hates Star Wars more than Star Wars fans. No one's more angry at the mob than the mob. But anyway, yeah, Venom. Took a long time, burned up a lot of ink, had to take a few breaks on this one, but I think it turned out pretty good. I appreciate you guys coming by, and if you stuck it out for this long, go ahead and give us a like and a subscribe. Kenny and I, my producer, we've got a podcast called Pop Culture Classics that you can find wherever podcasts are found. Got a few different published books on Amazon: The Curse of the Jade Monkey activity book, the comic book planner, which will help walk you through making your own comic book from the ground up, great for teens, and the All Skulls coloring book. And then, of course, always there's the Patreon, patreon.com/mopandbucket. If you want to support us, check things out there, buy one of our books, check out other merch, give us a like and a subscribe. We'll catch you in the next one.